So we've done red, yellow, blue, green, and about every other colour there is possible, and we are now on the stand where the white tractors live. This is the David Brown Tractor Club. David Brown Tractor Club this year is celebrating 30 years, so it was founded in 1995, and this is the gentleman who founded the thing. This is Mr. Martin George. Thank you very much for having us here
thanks
and talking to us. You founded the club in 1995. Tell us a little bit, what was it inspired you to do it? What was it you thought motivated you to form this tractor club?
Well, I bought a David Brown 900, then I bought another David Brown 900 that was better.
Yeah.
Found that it was difficult to get parts. Started saying there should be a club for it. Didn't really get on with it. This was 1992 and it was 1995 before I actually sort of bit the bullet.
Took a few years to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, and a disappointment there was if I had started in 92, there would have been a chance of speaking to Sir David Brown himself.
So you never got that opportunity?
No, he passed away in 1993, but we do have his grandson as our president.
Oh, that there is impressive.
It's very nice, yeah.
So you founded the club. Let's move on 30. I know you had a little bit of a hiatus from the club, but you've now been back with the club for the last few years, haven't you?
Yes, that's right.
Tell us about the club, members-wise. You know, how has it changed since you started? Obviously, it's bigger, but how much change have you seen in recent
years? The
years?
membership is sort of worldwide.
Right.
There's probably 300 overseas members, approximately 1,000 UK members.
Right. So
it's fairly static. We've lost so many of the original members due to old age.
Yeah, well, that's
and you know, I ain't getting any older, so 30 years, you know, a lot's changed. There's been a lot of different people involved with the club over the years, and every single one of them has played an important part progressing the club to where it is today.
So we were saying before we came on camera that you were saying that it's amazing. It never ceases to amaze you how many David Brown tractors come out of the woodwork in comparison as a percentage of how many were actually built. When you compare that to how many Fords and Fergusons were built.
Yeah, David Brown was only ever a small manufacturer compared to the big boys. And like some of the other British built tractors, 80% production went abroad overseas.
Right.
So we've only got 20% left in this country,
of what was ever made.
Anyway. But there has been one or two imported back from various countries, some of the rarer ones.
And that's something that needs to be pointed out, really, because David Brown was a company that was very innovative, wasn't it? I mean, we all know now about the you know, the relationship with Aston Martin and all that sort of stuff, but with the tractors concerned, I mean, there was a lot of innovation that came from David Brown, wasn't there? I mean, the hydro shift gearbox was started.
That was quite late. That was quite later on, but obviously it all started with the partnership with Harry Ferguson back in 1936 when they built the Ferguson Brown tractors. That was the first tractor with a 3-point linkage, which obviously got adopted worldwide on every tractor built since. David Brown wouldn't pay any patents to Harry Ferguson because they'd fallen out, they didn't like each other. So the David Brown hydraulic system was very different to what the other manufacturers were perhaps paying patents on. But the achievements that David Brown did from only a few people, the key people that designed the whole thing from the floor upwards, I just find it incredible that everything was done in-house as well. They didn't buy engines in, they didn't buy transmissions in, it was all done.
It makes you wonder where it came from, because if you're thinking about it, so we talked about the transmission system, but I mean there was Implematic, Selectomatic, you know, they put Synchromesh on, by the early 70s they had Synchromesh on the transmission 2 and 3 gears. They had 4 ranges where the people had 2 ranges. You know, there was hydrostatic steering was
one of the first
to do that. There was so many innovations that David, the single lever Selectomatic, I mean, how clever was that at the time? I know it was a bit of a Marmite thing because we didn't take the time to understand it, but you know, for a small company, those type of innovations are quite remarkable.
Yeah, from only a handful of a few people, yeah. Which I was fortunate enough to meet some of the great names from the past
Yeah.
like the chief engineers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, in terms of 30 years, you founded the thing. Which era of David Brown is it that you really aspire to? And is it the earlier ones? Is it the later ones? Is it which ones is it that really strike a chord for you?
Well, I was born in 1965, so I've always said I'd have been a white tractor and I'd have been Selectomatic. So the Selectomatic system is celebrating 60 years this year. So am I.
Yeah. Me too, actually.
Yeah, right. So
yes, it does, doesn't
thanks, yeah. I thought that you said it. Everything about them's unique. We found out recently that obviously prior to these models, some of the cranks would have been ground at Meltham, I'm sure. But as time moved on at this era, there was only the 3-cylinder engine crank that was actually machined at Meltham. The others were bought in from, well, I think it was GKN later on. I forgot the actual.
Do you know, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they were bought in. Obviously all quality checked and measured and all that at the factory. Bit of a bomb-proof tractor. Some people say that the 880 is perhaps the best tractor they ever made. The 3-cylinder engine's perhaps the best engine they ever made. But I just turn around and say, well, they're all good.
They are. I often did wonder why they had a 3-cylinder engine with a 5 bearing crank, and then they had a 4-cylinder engine with a 3 bearing crank. That logic seemed to have escaped me. I don't know.
Yeah, well, obviously the 3 bearing crank was from the very beginning. I don't know the answer why, but obviously they were learning as they went along.
I mean, it was great in the 60 horsepower, but by the time it got up to like your 14 with the turbochargers, it wasn't quite so reliable.
Possibly not, no, but it still did the job.
Yes, it did. Now, I would tend to agree with you. I really have I grew up with David Browns because where I come from in the Midlands, it was Massey Ferguson or David Brown. That was what we had. And that era of tractor is a tractor I always really liked.
Well,
I like the colour.
I always tell
I
tell a funny little story about a 996 VQ cab, and that was on the farm where I started going as a lad from school, and I took my tractor driving test on a 996 just like this one in Meltham.
Did you?
At the time I didn't realise that it was going to be quite a milestone achievement because there won't be that many people that took the test in
you
Meltham.
were actually predestined then to start this club?
Possibly.
Yeah, I think you were, there's no doubt
and
about
that's
that.
where my David Brown obsession perhaps started.
My first David Brown experience was on a 990 Selectomatic. It was an early, I think it was a 66 one. It had a loader on it and it didn't have power steering. It was the most brutal, miserable tractor, but we bashed it with a 995 like this, and with hydrostatic steering it was a brilliant tractor. I love those things.
And on the same farm, before I actually drove this, because it wasn't that old then, 30 years, well no, going back bloody 45 years.
45 years, yeah.
They had a 950, just like the one that's on the Shepherd's Hut, and I drove that quite a bit. I know where that tractor's gone.
Do you?
Yeah, it's still in Meltham.
Really?
One of the members has it.
Yeah, it's lovely, isn't it? Is it true that Queen Elizabeth famously asked when they changed the colours and they introduced the tractor, she said, ask them why they've gone white? I read that somewhere recently that Her Majesty the Queen said, oh, why have you chosen white?
It was NIDA in America that sacked the Ford dealers off.
Right.
Or Ford decided to do it themselves.
Okay.
And they sold, it begins with B, Boham. There was one drove down here like a small mini tractor.
Okay, yeah.
And they were white.
Yeah.
So NIDA wanted another tractor manufacturer and David Brown got it. But they wanted the colour changing, and the first tractors that were sent to America were white tractors, restyled to look a little bit like this. I wish I could remember the name of it. But they were actually Implematic tractors.
Really?
But they did it for the American market to match up to this miniature tractor, and it looked right. They liked the colour scheme, they liked the look of it, and that's how your white tractors were born.
And it stuck?
It stuck, yeah, all
And
the way
actually, it's a
through.
much better. I much prefer the colour scheme and the style to the earlier. I know you have to be careful with getting the right colour names for
Hunting pink and primrose yellow.
There you go. I'm glad that you got that right. And yeah, and you look at the difference in the tractors. Essentially, underneath they're the same damn
yeah,
thing.
very much so. Yeah.
But the styling just brought them out. They really did a good job of that.
Yeah.
So, talk to me a little bit about. I mean, we've gone around today. We've seen some of the stuff that's going on here. Obviously, it's a long time now. David Brown's been gone a long time. It had been gone 7 years before you started the club. Or, you know, what's these tractors over here? Are we starting to see more of these coming now in the restoration circles? Or doing it? I mean, how are these being conceived? Because they weren't actually that well received at the time, were they?
I don't know. I don't know what the reasoning was. Tractor demand perhaps went down around this era. I don't know which one to start with really.
Well, this is a beautiful tractor, isn't it? 4-wheel drive, 1694.
Yeah, well, I have
Magpie.
I have one of these, just the same white. There was only 697 white ones built.
Really?
The specification is 4-wheel drive hydroshift, turbocharged. That is it, one spec. Probably affected the sales because people might have wanted to have a synchromesh or even a 2-wheel drive, which this one here is a 1694 2-wheel drive. Allegedly the customer wanted one 2-wheel drive, so the factory obliged. It is stamped as a 1594, but that's possibly because the computer wouldn't allow them to tap in
the computer says no.
1694 and 2-wheel drive. They may have done the 4-wheel drive because they felt that the 2-wheel drive or synchromesh transmission might not stand the horsepower.
Well, because there wasn't a 4-wheel drive hydroshift anyway before these tractors.
Before the 90 series,
right.
94 series, yeah, that's right.
Because they couldn't.
Well, there was no demand for it. That was their attitude.
Was it?
And that's how the likes of County and Roadless got in, because even Ford didn't want to do 4-wheel drive tractors. But of course, once Ford did start doing 4-wheel drive tractors, it was the nail in the coffin for Roadless and County.
But David Brown were one of the first manufacturers to start. They had 4-wheel drives in the late 60s. I know that they were developing themselves.
In the Selectomatic range, yeah. But there was no. They always felt there was no demand. But the other thing that seemed to rule it out was hydroshift. You could only have 4-wheel drive synchromesh. Right. But I don't think there was any real problem for doing it. Obviously not, because it came later.
I did some research a few years ago. Actually, it was for the farm, a farming publication, and we did a little bit of the history into 4-wheel drive, and I was surprised how many variants there were produced over the years, adaptations and modifications.
Yeah, from a small company.
It's quite surprising.
Yeah.
Another thing they always did, which I always found innovative, I mean, you've got the final drives on these things which rotate, don't they?
Yeah.
And then, where did that come from? I mean, was that...
Well, it's on the very first tractor to the very last tractor. Probably from the tank gearboxes, which the David Brown company, as it stands today, still with the David Brown name, still do Ministry of Defence stuff. It does actually, we could recreate something that they did in the 50s, and that is that they have the tractors driving at an angle.
Right.
It's a very low centre of gravity, for obvious reasons. You've got all that weight in the wheel, rather than it all being in the middle of the tractor. And I think we could actually recreate something, but no other manufacturer or club would want to put the tractor on the slope. There was only one problem with it when they were doing it on a wooden ramp. If ground was soft or wet, the angle was increasing every time they did it, but they still did. We've got photos somewhere of some of these displays that they used to do.
Marvellous tractors, they really are. Well, I have to say to you, you're to be congratulated, really, aren't you? I mean, on the success of it, something you did, you started, and I did, because you supply parts and paraphernalia and advice. You have a magazine. I mean, the club's really become, in its own right, is a huge support to David Brown owners, as you said, globally.
It is. It's active, and it's not. I started it, but I can't take the credit for all the years that everybody else,
yes,
everybody's
put into it.
kept going, and the members, and the committees, and all the rest of it. It's.
Well, I just, all I can say, I mean, I just want to, it's a landmark you should be proud of. Everybody involved in the club should be proud of. I mean, and this is a really, truly lovely exhibit, and I just want to thank you very much for having us here and telling us a little bit about it.
That's it. Well, I wish I could have told you more.